हल्का सा Untitled Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Dhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gauranita Hai Gauranita Hai Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Gauranita Jaya Gaura Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jagannatha Jagannatha Baladeva Jaya Radha Balaba Radha Balaba Radhe Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Lady Subhadra ki, Shri Shri Radha Ballabha Bhagavan ki, Giriraj Maharaj ki, Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Go Premanandi, oh glorious to some devotees, oh glorious to some devotees, oh glorious to some devotees, oh glorious to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10. Maharaj Rahugana meets Jadabharata. Text 13. Unmata Mata Jadavat Sva Samstam Katasya Me Vira Chikitsetena Artaha Kiyan Bhavata Shikshitena Stabdha Pramathasya Cha Pishtapeshaha Unmatamatta Jadavatsva Samstham Katasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Atakiyang Bhavata Shikshitena Stabda Pramathasya Cha Pishtapeshaha Unmattamata Jadavatsva Samstam Katasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Atakiyan Bhavata Shikshitena Stabda Pramathasya Cha Pishtapeshaha Unmatamata Jadavatsa Samstam Katasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Atakiyam Bhavata Shikshitena Stata Pramathasya Cha Pishtapeshaha Matamata Jadavatsa Samstam Katasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Pramathasya Cha Pishtapeshaha Unmatamata Jadavatsa Samstam Katasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Stata Pramathasya Cha Pishtapeshaha. Ladies. Matamata Jadavacha Samstam Gatasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Unmatamata Jadavatsa Samstham Katasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Atakiyam Bhavata Shikshitena Stabda Pramathasya Cha Vikshitena Unmatamata Jadavatsa Samstam Gatasya me vira chikitsitena Atakiyan bhavata shikshitena Sada paramatasya cha pishta peshaha Amatajata jadavat swasamstam Gatasya me vira chikishitena Atakiyam bhavata sikshitena Sada pamatasya cha pishta peshaha. Anyone else? Nice. What's your name? Anusha. Very nice. Good chanting. Unmatamata jadavat swasamstam Gatasya me virya chikitsitena Atakyam bhavata shikshitena Atha pamatasya cha pishta peshaha Urmatamata jadavat swasamstam Gatasya me vira chikitsitena Atakiyam bhavata sikshitena Apatamatasya cha pishta peshaha. How about these two here? Krishna, Hare Bol. They've grown so much. You know, we haven't seen the kids for a long time. They're all grown up. Nice. Word for word. Unmata. Madness. Mata. A drunkard. Jadavat. Like a dunce. There's a whole string of words here, like synonyms. Svasamstam. Situation in my original constitutional position. Gatasya. Of one who has obtained. Me. Of me. Vira. O King. Chikitsitena. By your chastisement. Artaha. The meaning or purpose. Kiyan. What? Bhavata. By you. Shikshitena. By being instructed. Stabdha. Dull. Pramatasya. Of a crazy man. Cha. Also. Pishtapeshaha. Like a grinding flour. There's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words that mean crazy in this in this shloka. My dear King, you have said, you rascal, you dull, crazy fellow, I am going to chastise you, and then you will come to your senses. In this regard, let me say that although I live like a dull, deaf and dumb man, I am actually a self-realized person. What will you gain by punishing me? If your calculation is true, and I am a madman, then your punishment will be like beating a dead horse. There will be no effect. When a madman is punished, he is not cured of his madness. Please repeat the translation. My dear King, you have said, you rascal, you dull, crazy fellow, I'm going to chastise you, and then you will come to your senses. In this regard, let me say that although I live like a dull, deaf and dumb man, I am actually a self-realized person. What will you gain by punishing me? If your calculation is true, and I am a madman, then your punishment will be like beating a dead horse. There will be no effect. When a madman is punished, he is not cured of his madness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Everyone in this material world is working like a madman under certain impressions falsely acquired in the material condition. For example, a thief who knows that stealing is not good and who knows that it is followed with punishment by a king or by God, who has seen that thieves are arrested and punished by the police, nonetheless steals again and again. He is obsessed with the idea that by stealing he will be happy. This is a sign of madness. Despite repeated punishment, the thief cannot give up his stealing habit. Therefore, the punishment is useless. Om Agyanantimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namasreshtam Anumapi Sachiputra Swarupam Rupam Tasya Grajam Urupurim Maturingo Stavritim Radha Kundagirivada Mahoda Dhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasapatita Kripaya Sri Gurum Tam Natosmi Unmata Mata Jadavatsvasamstam Gatasya Me Vira Chikitsitena Artakyan Bhavata Shikshitena Stavda Pramatasya Chapishtapeshaha. My dear King, you have said, you rascal, you dull, crazy fellow, I'm going to chastise you, and then you will come to your senses. In this regard, let me say that although I am like a dull, deaf and dumb man, I am actually a self-realized person. What will you gain by punishing me? If your calculation is true, and I am a madman, then your punishment will be like beating a dead horse. There will be no effect. When a madman is punished, he is not cured of his madness. In every religion in the world, there's some sort of a theology or some sort of a statement about the supremacy of God, the Godhood, and that God is the creator, or that God is great, or that God is the sustainer, is a common thread in all religions. And one of the principles that are taught as something that is something that can't be contravened, incontravenable, means that we can't go against that order or that principle. And that is the idea of covetousness. It means to covet means to desire something of someone else's. I want to have that thing. And I should have that thing. Not just desire, but I should have it. And in religion, in most religious systems, that's considered to be sinful. It's against the law of God, or it's against the law of the land. It's against the law of common law, that we can't take somebody else's possession. But we come to this material world, and Prabhupada says more or less everybody here is a madman. We're mad because we're trying to covet that which is not ours. We're trying to own or to obtain, to exploit something that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the Supreme, to Krishna. And the process of Krishna consciousness is to become freed from that concept of covetousness, to become free from that concept of desiring to have something that's not mine. The Ishavasi Principle. Those of us who are studying the Bhakti Shastri, in the Ishopanasad, we have this concept called Ishavasya. That Krishna is the Ishavasya, that everything in the material world is Krishna's. And our idea as devotees in Krishna consciousness is to understand that we have to use everything in Krishna's service. It's a very simple process. That we don't belong to it. Krishna is the Bhaktaram, Jagatapasam. He's the supreme beneficiary of all sacrifices. Means everything goes back to him. Tadarpanam. We offer everything back to the Supreme Lord. We get from the Lord and we offer back to the Lord. And in that way we become purified. That will be the underlying theme of today's class. That we become purified, we purify our consciousness, we purify the misconception or misidentification with the material body, with sense gratification, through engaging in service, devotional service. Prabhupada says in the teachings of Lord Kapiladev that sense gratification is meant for the animals and sense control is meant for the humans. And he says by this consciousness, we become purified of this consciousness of sense gratification by engaging in devotional service. So we elevate to the platform, the human platform, by engaging in bhakti, in devotional service. Not just by engaging in mundane karma activities. And we'll distinguish today, or we'll hear what Prabhupada says about different types of karmas. Vikarma and karma and akarma. And understand more clearly what makes us mad, unmata, mata, pramata, what makes us crazy in this material world, sense gratification, and what frees us from that sense control. And we have to understand this distinction between vikarma, activities that shouldn't be performed, that are against the regulations in the scripture, and akarma, or karma, which are activities that are regulated, and akarma, or activities that have no bondage in this material world, that liberate us from the material world. Yagyatat kamanon yatra, because we perform the activity as an arpanam for God, for Krishna. The activities for the Supreme Person. When we first went to New Zealand, we lived in New Zealand for a long time, and we went to visit a very special, a holy place for the Māori people, the indigenous people in New Zealand, particularly in the North Island, and it's a tree. They worship a tree, a big tree. It's called a kauri tree. This kauri tree is huge. It's massive diameter. I don't know what the dimensions are, but it's a huge tree. It's called Tane Muhurta. Muhurta. It's a Tane Muhurta. It's a special tree. not a special time, but it's a special tree in north of Auckland, a place called Dargaville. And there we were driving back from right up north, and we're coming back into Auckland City, and we thought we'll go and have a look at this special tree. And we went there, and when we got there, a big busload of Māori people came. And I don't know if you know them very well. They're indigenous people. They're from the islands, but they arrived in New Zealand a long time back. And they're like our Aboriginals here in Australia, the Māori people in New Zealand. They're very strong. They're a warrior class. They came to New Zealand on a waka, on a boat, and they rowed these boats across the Pacific Ocean, from islands like Tahiti or somewhere, like some other islands like this, Hawaii maybe. They paddled across the ocean in these huge boats. So they're very strong, and they do haka. You might have seen haka. They do this before they do the rugby match. They do a haka and they poke out their tongue. Have you seen? The Māori people do a dance. They poke the tongue right out. We have Māori devotees in our temple in Auckland, and they do this special dance they made a Nishingadev haka. Because haka is for warriors, right? So strong people. And they do this to intimidate their opponents, to get them scared. Rah, rah, rah. So they make really loud noises, and they beat their chest and arms and make them, look at my muscles, you get scared of me, run away, go away. So they make this dance called haka. It's very ferocious. The first time you see it, it's scary. You think, oh my God. We had it in the temple many times, and for Mukunda Maharaj's, I remember one year, Mukunda Maharaj turned 60 or 60, I think, 60 in Auckland a long time ago, and we had a special haka for him. He came to the school hall, and we had the local Māori devotees do a haka, and they have a spear, and they put the spear on his chin. And they do, and they put the spear right under his chin, and Maharaj was like, oh. He might not see his next birthday. He's feeling a bit scared. So anyway, they're dancing around the tree. The people come and they sing. They're musical people. They have nice, very beautiful voices, and they sing. And so they're dancing. They came around the tree, and they are all moving around the tree. And I was wondering what they're doing, and they're playing guitar and singing to the tree, offering respect to the tree. A lot of them, 50 of them at least. And so I was standing next to one man, who's a big man, tattoo everywhere, all tattoo on the face, all over the face, on the head, arm, everywhere tattoo, special kind of tattoo. It's a Māori tattoo. It's just one color, dark color. So it means he's got mana. It's a Sanskrit word, mana. It means he's got position, pride, In the organization, he's got big mana. So I asked him, what are they doing? Why are you dancing and playing guitar for the tree, Tani Muhurta? It's a very awesome tree, it's like awe-inspiring. And he said, because we Māori people, we understand that nature is a gift from God, and that we are custodians. We don't own nature. We can't own the seascape or the landscape or the sky or the mountains. They have very special connection with their mountains and with nature. And nobody can own this nature. But we are here as the caretaker, the custodian. We are caretakers of the land. And so we're praying to Tani Muhurta. She's considered to be the personification of nature, of Mother Nature in New Zealand. She's the oldest, the biggest tree in New Zealand. So people come from everywhere to see her and offer respect. So we're praying to her that we can become good custodians, that we can look after her and look after her species and look after nature like this. So that's very much a part of their culture, that they're not the controllers, that they're not, they don't act like this, of course, but that's ingrained in their culture, that they don't own nature, at least. That they shouldn't exploit nature, they shouldn't pollute the rivers, and they shouldn't pollute the air, and they shouldn't cut down the trees unnecessarily. They have that consciousness, that belief, that understanding. It's part of their culture. So in one sense, that's one step, not Brahman realization, of course, but it's one step of appreciation or acknowledgement that we don't have dominion over nature, mankind, that we're here to to live with nature and in harmony with nature. And the peace formula given by Krishna is to understand that he's the supreme beneficiary. He's the friend, he's the Lord and Master of all the demigods, Krishna. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. And he's the friend of everybody. He's in the heart of all living entities. Suridam Sarvabhutanam. So that was an interesting experience for us, and an eye-opener that the indigenous people have much more of a connection with culture, with nature, than we do. And we have more of a tendency for controlling or exploiting material nature rather than living with nature, as the Aboriginal people have lived for millions and millions of years on this land here. And when we say that, you know, in an official gathering, like at a community meeting or a university or in a parliament, we might recognize the original custodians of the land, the particular tribe from this particular area, the Aboriginal people. And in one sense that's a good thing, but oftentimes we say that they're the original owners of the land, or the original proprietors of this land are this particular tribe, but they're not the original proprietors of the land. They're the original custodians of the land. They're not the original proprietors. So yes, we can acknowledge that. And in all of the official events that we attend in New Zealand, we do that for the Maori people also. And they have a special event where you recognize the ancestors and acknowledge them. But as custodians, not as proprietors. And sometimes here in Australia you see the sign out, we recognize the Aboriginal people of this land to be the original proprietors of this land, but they're not proprietors. They're custodians of the land. Anyway, the point is that we shouldn't become, we have to accept and understand that there's a superior force in action in nature, and that we don't own nature, and nature's not there for our control. Here in this purport, particularly in this class today, in this verse today, we're hearing from Jadabharat that when you're mad, doesn't matter what type of punishment you will dish out to a madman, it won't cure him of his madness. He'll continue to do the same thing again and again. And this is a recurring theme in our scriptures. In the Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada talks about that the repetition of sinful activity can't be stopped by atonement. Atonement won't, prayaschita can't do that. It can't nullify the desire in the heart. It can't, the atonement, prayaschita, any form of karmas can't nullify the desire to do sinful activity, or the kutta and the bija. Neither of those two can be destroyed by prayaschita, by any type of karmas, to rectify a situation. In the Karmakanda section in the Veda, there are so many different things we can do to rectify a situation. If we did a bad thing, then we can do something to rectify it, a pious activity, and that will nullify it, and we'll be back on plain level field. But it's not like that, because the seed is still there. We continue to do the same wrong thing. In the Nectar of Instruction, at the beginning, in Vacho Vegam Manasakroda Vegam, in the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction, the first paragraph of the Nectar of purport, Srila Prabhupada, he quotes Parikshit Maharaj's discussion to Shukadeva Goswami in the 6th canto of Bhāgavatam. And Parikshit Maharaj says, what is the use of atonement if you continue to perform the same sinful activity? It's useless. It's like the bathing of an elephant. He comes onto the shore and sprinkles the dust all over him again. He just came out of the water. Maharaj Parikshit asked that question. And Sukadeva Goswami is very happy to hear that and respond to that yes, it's useless. And then Prabhupada explains, and Rupa Goswami explains, that the real atonement is to destroy or to burn the desire in the heart for sinful activity. And that can only be done by bhakti. That can only be achieved by engaging in pure devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master. So this idea of repeating sin and repeating the wrong thing in criminology, in this or in psychology and criminology, they have this concept of not being cured. Even though you get punishment, you can't become cured of that thing. The technical term in criminology is called recidivism. And we were practicing and studying a process of behavior management, if you like, called restorative practices. In criminology, it's called restorative justice. And in restorative justice, they studied the criminals that went into the jails, particularly in America and all over the world, in most countries in the world, even in India, many countries. They have this process of studying criminology, understanding the psyche of a criminal. Why does somebody continue to do the same sin, the same crime, even though they got punished for it? They got punished for it, they went to jail, and they come out, and as soon as they come out, they go back in. And people laugh and say, oh, it's because they've got a nice facility in jail, they got, swimming pool, they got gymnasium, they got flat screen TV, they got Wi-Fi everywhere, so it's a nice place, better than their other house. So they go back. But the actual thing is that they're not cured of their consciousness, of their mentality to do sin, to do crime, to commit crime. And so they thought they can't keep building jails. It's a huge problem in America, particularly. The jails are full. They've been full for decades, completely full, and they keep building more and more jails. So they can't keep doing it. Then they had this study about 30, 40 years ago. They started a serious study of criminology, of what's going on in the mind of these criminals. Why do they keep doing the same crime? We punish them, and they keep coming back for more. And we give more punishment, and they come back for more. They do a bigger crime, and they get more punishment. It just escalates. Instead of curing them, instead of restoring them, it escalates. So they came up with a philosophy or a system called restorative justice. And in the restorative justice system, the criminals, the offender, is brought more to accountability than in the criminal system. And the offender has to meet the one who they've offended, the victim. They bring them together, and there's some kind of, not reconciliation, but there's a recognition of the hurt and of the damage and of the consequence of what they did to this person. And then through that process, the criminal starts to internalize, starts to make some adjustment that, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't understand the consequence of my action that had happened there. And it's done in a very kind of regulated way and a very authentic way, and over a long period of time. Not to re-traumatize the victim and things like this, but there's a whole science behind it, restorative practices. And the principles of restorative practices have been engaged and incorporated into many of our practices in behavior management in schools, for example, where children are made accountable, they're made to understand the consequence of their actions. When they do something wrong, they're made to understand what is the consequence of their action. And by understanding the consequence of their action, they're less likely to repeat the same crime. They're less likely to repeat the same mistake. And they found this with serial, with murderers, with rapists, with the biggest criminals in the jails. They found the ones who went through restorative practices were less likely to repeat the crime. So the rate of recidivism reduced considerably as they were practicing this over the years and years and decades. And so that now it's become a default system in many states in the world, in America, in many countries in the world, in Canada and in New Zealand particularly, for youth offenders, is restorative practices, because it helps to reduce the repeated crime. Doesn't completely destroy it, wipe it out, but it reduces repeat recidivism, because the perpetrator, the wrongdoer, the person who's in the wrong, is understanding what the consequence of what they're doing, how what they're doing affects other people, and then that makes a shift. So you can say that in the material world is like that. It's designed to help us to make a shift, that we can restore or we can transform our lording it over propensity, our material consciousness, to spiritual consciousness by engaging in activities and internalizing, understanding what are the consequences of my actions, understanding the workings of the material nature. Krishna says in the 14th chapter that when you understand the material nature, you'll understand how to become freed from it, the gunas. By understanding this supreme knowledge that I haven't taught to you before, another statement that Krishna says, this is the most confidential knowledge, I haven't taught this before. When you understand this, you'll understand how to become free from the modes of nature. So that is another aspect of Krishna's mercy. The material world is created in such a way that we can become reformed, that we can reduce our repeated crimes, we can reduce our repeated sinful activities, we can reduce that, we can nullify it. In the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev again, he says that by engaging in devotional service, you can uproot the deep-rooted desire for material enjoyment from the heart, only by doing bhakti. Otherwise, the material desires are in the heart, they can't be destroyed. But when we engage in bhakti and devotional service, it can be, and we become rectified or restored to our original consciousness. And that's what Prabhupada said, by performing tapasya, we can become restored from our original, to our original consciousness and purified of our material contamination by engaging in bhakti. And that was Prahlad Maharaj's instruction to his classmates, and Prahlad Maharaj's instructions to his father to do bhakti, to engage in devotional service. And Prahlad Maharaj said the same thing. He said, it is amazing that people, even though that they're suffering from this tapatraya dukhitatma, from the threefold miseries, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, adhidevika miseries, even though people are suffering from that and they're rotting in materialistic family life, they still don't become interested in becoming free from that misery. He said that is an amazing thing, that all these people are engaging in these activities that cause misery, and they continue to engage in the same activities that cause misery. And so Prahlad Maharaj says that you should become merciful to his classmates. He said, look, everybody's suffering in this material world. They're engaging in activities that will continue to keep them suffering. They know that they'll continue to suffer, but they engage in those activities. They can't stop. And so we should, as devotees, show mercy. Daya. We should be merciful to all sarvabhuteshu, to all the living entities, to show this special mercy and give them the opportunity to engage in devotional service, bhakti. Because bhakti will uproot the desire for material enjoyment, which will destroy the misery. Therefore, it's sukhada. Rupa Goswami says that is a quality of pure bhakti. A characteristic for performing pure devotional service is that you'll get happiness. It's subhada, it'll give all auspiciousness. Your life will become auspicious when you engage in bhakti. And that's Prahlad Maharaj's, his prayer is that we engage everybody in devotional service. And his instruction to his classmates is that become a friend to all living entities. Soridam, doya kurata soridam. That show mercy to the living entities, befriend the living entities. And how do we befriend the living entities and show mercy to them? Give them bhakti, give them exposure to devotional service. There's a nice story in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam that illustrates, and I realize that the class has been a little bit technical maybe for our younger audience, and the younger audience are very important here in this temple. So I want you to listen to this story carefully. It's about Lord Nityananda. We're in between Advaita-Acharya's appearance day and Nityananda Prabhu's appearance day, right in the middle of a very auspicious time, leading up to Gaura Purnima. So there's a lot of mercy to be had by hearing about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by Nityananda Prabhu, by Advaita-Acharya, and the Panchatattva. An interesting thing about the Panchatattva is that the Panchatattva Kambarukam, they're all about bhakti. Bhakta Rupam, Bhakta Avataram, Bhaktakyam, Bhakti Shakti. They're all bhakti. They came to teach bhakti. Incarnation of bhakti. That's why they came. The Panchatattva are just about bhakti. It's about to teach bhakti. Lord Chaitanya is glorified by a great teacher, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that because he came to teach Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yogam. He came to teach to become renounced from material world, to understand what is renunciation, to understand what is knowledge, to get real knowledge, vidya, and bhakti, to give bhakti, because bhakti will help us to become free from our misconceptions, from sense gratification. So Lord Nityananda came to Navadvip. Have you been to Navadvip? Have you been to Navadvip? Yeah. Lord Nityananda, have you been to Navadvip? Mayapur? Who did you see in Mayapur? Who did you see there in Mayapur? Which deity was in Mayapur? Who? Nrsimhadev. Yeah, he's very memorable. Yeah, definitely Nrsimhadev. Who else is in Mayapur? Panchatattva in Mayapur. Very memorable also, right? Beautiful deity, Panchatattva. You know Ganga Prabhu, he was here recently with Banu Swami, Italiano, Gino. He was here, beautiful class Ganga gave. We heard, at least one class I heard, he gave a class. I'm not sure if you saw that, but it was very, very amazing class. And he told many different stories, but Ganga Prabhu, he was the one who went down to South India with all the precious stones and jewelry, and he had it melted for the casting of the Panchatattva. And he was there from the beginning. He's been in Mayapur a long, long time, maybe 30, 40 years. He was there from the beginning of that whole process of Panchatattva to putting them on the altar and installing them there, and everything in between. So we're writing a course on Panchatattva for our bhakti learning, and he's going to give us some information. We've got a book. He's going to give us information about what happened in making the Panchatattva deities and bringing them onto the altar. They're big deities. Like Gaura-Nitai here are big. When the Gaura-Nitai were installed in 1975 by Srila Prabhupada, they were the biggest deities in ISKCON. The biggest Gaura-Nitai deities in ISKCON, and the heaviest. I mean, you couldn't carry them onto the altar. When Gaura-Nitai came, there was a little crane out there, because they're heavy. Now Gaura-Nitai are not going anywhere. You can't move them, bring them out for Abhishek. You can't take them on Ratha Yatra. They'll break the cart. They're heavy, right? They're big deity. But the small deities we can. Utsav Murti, they can come out and do Abhishek and everything. But big Gaura-Nitai we can't. So big Panchatattva, you can't carry them around. You can't take them out for for the festival, the elephant parade in Mayapur. You can't take Panchatattva out. Impossible. Too big, right? So, Lord Nityananda, he's the big personality on Lord Chaitanya's right-hand side in Panchatattva. And then on the Lord Nityananda's right-hand side is? Sri Advaita Acharya. His hand is like this outside, in that Mayapur. And then on his left-hand side, Lord Chaitanya's left-hand side is? Gadadhar Pandit. And on Gadadhar Pandit's left-hand side? Śrīvas Pandit, right? So, Lord Nityananda, he appeared in Navadvip. He wasn't born in Navadvip. He's from a place called Ekachakra, and then when he was a young boy, he went on a tour all around India. He went to many holy places, South India, West, North India, and East, of course. And he finished up in Vrindavan. And in his pastime, in the previous lifetime, in a previous incarnation, he was Balaram. So he was a cowherd boy. So he finished up in Vrindavan, and he was playing in the sands of the Yamuna, and he was enjoying there. And he was wondering, when will Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where's Krishna? He was asking the pujaris in the temple, where's Krishna? I came to Mathura, I came to Vrindavan to see Krishna. I don't see Krishna anywhere here. And they said, look, Krishna has actually appeared, but he's in Navadvip. He appeared in Mayapur. He's gone to Mayapur. So Lord Nityananda went to Mayapur. And when he came to Mayapur, he met Lord Chaitanya in a very beautiful meeting in a place called Nandana Bhavan. It's a temple next door to the ISKCON Centres Branches. When you walk out of our gate and go left, you can go to this temple. And it's a special meeting place. Advaita-Acharya and his wife Sita Devi were waiting there one time to test Lord Chaitanya, hiding there. Lord Chaitanya was hiding there one time and spent the whole night absorbed in Krishna Katha, discussing with Nandana-Acharya. And Nityananda Prabhu came there and hid there. So it's a hiding place, hideout. If you want to go and chant quiet japa, you go there and hide from the devotees in the Chandradoy Mandir. Sometimes we do that. Go there and hide because no one will come there. It's a quiet temple, but it's a good place to hide. And Lord Nityananda came, he met Lord Chaitanya, a very ecstatic meeting and embracing and crying and tears and rolling on the ground and everything like that. It's described in detail. And then they started the Sankirtan movement, Harinam. Harinam started to go everywhere in Mayapur. And Lord Nityananda was very expert in this process of kirtan and dancing. He was a very good dancer. And dressing. So he wouldn't go out in dirty old jeans and mismatched shoes and mismatched socks and old clothes. He went out in very beautiful clothing. He had all this beautiful different coloured cloth, usually blue, but he had some other different clothes that he would wear. Beautiful silk dhotis and chadas and garlands. He always wore many garlands. He said that you can't count how many garlands he would wear sometime. And he had beautiful jewelry, big earrings and pearl necklaces and bangles, and he had gold rings on every finger, on his thumb also, 10 gold rings on his hand, and beautiful necklaces and incredibly opulent turban. He was the best in turban making. Like here we have some amazing pujaris, especially Gaunitai pujaris, who do beautiful turbans. But Lord Nityananda, he was the original. He was beautiful. He could make an amazing turban, and he had people make amazing turban for him. So he was going out on Harinam looking like this incredible personality. Came from the spiritual world. He did come from the spiritual world. He is the spiritual world, Lord Nityananda. He brings the spiritual world with him. So he came dressed like this with sandalwood paste all over his body. Sandalwood paste and jewelry and beautiful costume, beautiful decoration, and beautiful scent. He would wear these natural scents, musk and aguru, and he had such a presence, and very tall and strong, powerful personality. And he did kirtan everywhere. It said he did kirtan in every house of the devotees, in every devotee house in Mayapur, in Navadvip Dham. He went for kirtan only, just for kirtan. And one day these thieves saw Nityananda, and they saw his jewelry, and they saw his beautiful like pearl necklaces and these very exotic earrings and bangles and ankle bells. He had these very exquisite silver ankle bells. And they were just saying, if I just had one ankle bell, I would be a rich man. What to speak of one earring or a bangle or a ring from his finger. So these thieves were eyeing him up and thinking, how much wealth he's got on him. So why don't we go to his house, go to Nityananda Prabhu's house one night, and when he's sleeping, we can steal all of his jewelry. That was their plan. We'll go to his house and steal his jewelry, and we'll become rich. We'll be very rich if we have his necklace and his bangles and things. So he was staying in the house of Hiranya Pandit, very special devotee in Navadvip. And they were doing kirtan in the house, and all the thieves said, okay, they made a plan. Let's all meet, a big group of them. Let's meet, and we'll go and wait for everybody to sleep in the house, the Hiranya Pandit, and we'll sneak in and steal the jewelry. So they went there one night, and they were waiting outside, and they could see inside, they could see they're doing kirtan, and they could see Nityananda's jewelry, and they were all talking about it. I'm going to take his bangle. I've got his foot bells. I'm going to take his necklace. I'm going to take all the rings on his fingers. So they were all saying, okay, you had that, like this, when he's sleeping. But that night, something happened, something mystical happened. Nidra Devi, who's the goddess of sleep, she made all the thieves go to sleep. So they were waiting for Nityananda to go to sleep and everyone in the house to go to sleep, but they all fell asleep. And they woke up in the morning. When the rooster starts crowing in the morning, they woke up, and already the sun was in the sky. And they were thinking, they had weapons, they had like their sword and different weapons like this, and they were thinking, well, we have to hide our weapons, everybody can see us now. They know that we're thieves. So they hid their weapons in the bush and they ran home. They couldn't do anything that night. So they said that was just a mistake. The reason is, what happened is, we fell asleep. First of all, they started chastising each other. You fell asleep first. You were supposed to be the guard. You fell asleep. And this one said, no, you fell asleep. So I said, no, actually it was because we didn't worship Chandi Devi. We should have done a puja and to Chandi, and then we would have had a good opportunity to get all the jewels. So let's wait for some time, go back, get our weapons and wait for them. And we'll wait for them to sleep and we'll steal the jewels. So they went back. After some time they went back there. And when they went back there, this time it was night time. They had their weapons and they had their strategy. They had their theory, what they were going to do, who was going to do what, who was going to take what, when they were going to do it. And they were waiting and they were looking inside and they saw these guards, these big soldiers. But these soldiers were huge. They were twice the size of a normal human being, and they were big-bodied and strong. And they had weapons, and they were screaming out the name of Krishna, like loud, doing loud kirtan, walking up and down outside the house of Hiranya Pandit. And the thieves were looking, thinking, one of these guards can crush all of them, but there's 6 guards there. They haven't got a hope, even all their weapons, no hope. So they got upset. Even though they did their puja to Chandi Devi, they offered meat and wine and everything and made her happy, but they got there and they saw these huge monsters waiting outside guarding Nityananda Prabhu. So they went home, second time. Then they said, well, when something's gone, that was another mistake, but it won't happen again third time. Third time we'll be lucky. So they made another plan to go. They hid their weapons to go in the middle of the night and steal the jewels of Lord Nityananda. So then they went out the third time, and this time it was the darkest night ever. There wasn't a star in the sky, there was no moon, and it was fully cloud, and they couldn't see a thing. They couldn't even see each other. And so they thought they'll get close. They'll get closer and closer. But as they were going closer to the house, one of them fell into a pit. And in the pit there was all these maggots and insects, and they were biting, and then another one fell into a pit of thorns, and he's getting scratched and messed up, and he's bleeding and screaming. And then another one fell into another pit, and in the pit there was snakes and scorpions and different fierce like animals in there. So they all fell into pits. All the thieves were in different pits, and they were all in agony. They couldn't get out, and it was pitch black. And then Indra, who understood that these thieves are coming to harass Nityananda, he brought his Samvartaka clouds. Not exactly Samvartaka, but he brought heavy rain and thunder. And the thunder was cracking like in Mayapur. When you hear a storm there, when you hear the thunder in Mayapur, you get scared, right? Because it's the loudest thunder you've ever heard. So Indra came with his thunder and his hailstorm, and he's pounding them. They're in the pit and they're getting pounded by these hailstones, big hailstones like cricket balls, coming smashing on their head, and they're being bitten on the bottom, and they're getting scratched by the thorns. And then all of a sudden the leader of these thieves, the dacoits, he got the realization that, okay, that's enough. This person, Nityananda, he's special, he's God. He must be God, how could this be happening? And then as soon as he thought that, Indra stopped. Indra pulled the rain back and the hailstorms, and the thunder left. And then the night became bright. They could start to see each other. And then they came out of the pits. They were still harassed, of course. They had a bad experience. But they came out and they started to come to their consciousness, back to consciousness. And the head of the thieves, all the other thieves said, okay, this is time to go back. We're heading back home. Go and take bath in the Ganga and go home and just call it quits. This Nityananda, we can't touch his jewels. We're not going to get rich by this person. But so they went home. But the leader of the thieves, he said, no, I'm going to go straight to Nityananda in the house of Hiranya Pandit and offer my obeisances and surrender at his lotus feet. So he went in the house. And when he went into the house of Hiranya Pandit, the devotees were doing kirtan, he put his hands in the air and he was crying, said, please protect me, save me, I'm taking shelter of you. And then he rolled on the ground, and because he saw Nityananda, he was in so much ecstasy. He was rolling on the ground, his hair was standing up on end. And he was shivering, not because of the hailstones, but he was shivering because he saw Lord Nityananda. He was in ecstasy of Krishna Prema. He got Krishna Prema by Nityananda's mercy. And Nityananda was saying to him, who are you? You know, you must have Krishna's mercy. You've been a devotee of Krishna for lifetime after lifetime to be in this situation, to be so ecstatic just to see the devotees. You're such a great devotee, Nityananda was saying, like just glorifying him. And then he told him the whole story. The first night, what happened the first night? We all fell asleep. The second night, what happened the second night? We completely, we lost, we couldn't conceive of these monsters that were guarding you, these big soldiers outside. And then tonight, what happened? This storm, the hailstorms, the pit. Now, he told the whole story to Nityananda. And then Nityananda told him, all right. And then he told him about his sin. He's like Jagai Mada, like Paka Brahman is compared to this thief, This thief did everything wrong, much more than Jagai Madai. And he told him all of his sinful activities. And he told him, Nityananda said, you'll be free from all your sin. You won't have any sin left in you after you engage in bhakti. He says, you engage in the process of devotional service, kirtan, and tell all of your thief friends. Go to all your friends who are all thieves, tell them about bhakti, tell them about Krishna, and they'll become free from their sin. They'll become free from the desire to engage in sinful activity, to be thieves, and they'll become great devotees. And it said that thief, the chief of the thieves, did that. He became a great devotee of Lord Nityananda, and he told them, you worship Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya is so merciful, he's come in this age of Kali Yuga to give this process of bhakti yoga, so that when we engage in the process of bhakti, we become free from our sinful activities, free from the propensity to engage in sinful activity. And this is the only way to become, that the living entity can really restore themselves and become reconnected with Krishna through doing bhakti, not by any other process of prayaschita, not by any other process of atonement, but just engaging in bhakti, the heart will become cleansed. And when the heart is cleansed, we can engage in our original constitutional position. So that is the mercy of the devotees, the mercy of Lord Nityananda, the mercy of the Panchatattva, the mercy of this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is that we have a process to become free from sinful activity or from the desire to perform sinful activity. We have that process to understand our constitutional position as servant of Krishna and to become happy, to understand that's Yatvamam Shantim Richchati. We'll become really peaceful when we acknowledge that Krishna is the Bhaktaram, he's the supreme beneficiary, he's the Lord and Master of all the demigods, and he's the friend of all the living entities. Are there any questions or comments? Yes? Mike. You're on mic. Got your Mikey.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the nice class. My question is that you said that sense gratification is for animals and sense control is for the devotees. But we see when we're doing devotional service, we have a particular speaker, we have a particular singer. But isn't that sense enjoyment for us? Because it's not for Krishna. Because we're choosing a particular singer for Kirtan. We pray to Krishna to choose a particular singer. So isn't that a sense enjoyment for us?
I think I got most of it, but I'm missing one word. It's an important part of what your question is. It's a great question, but what?
I think she's saying particular singer.
Particular singer and particular?
Speaker.
Speaker. Okay, very good question. Okay, I'll just... is that sense gratification? This question, this has been answered by different devotees, and it's very important that we understand that the difference between sense gratification or things that we do for ourselves and things we do for Krishna. When we speak for ourselves, or when we sing for ourselves, people will think I'm famous when I do this nice melody, when I do this nice tune, when I get this nice kirtan pumping. People will think I'm a great kirtan leader. Or when I speak nicely, people will think, wow, he's very erudite. When I think for myself, that's sense gratification. Correct. Exactly, that's sense gratification. But when we do it for Krishna, when we fix our consciousness that this is our service for Krishna, that's bhakti, it's devotional service. So Prabhupada said it's very difficult to see the difference. The devotee and the non-devotee, their actions look exactly the same. We live in a house, we go shopping, we go to school, we do all the same things that everyone else does, but we have a different consciousness. So we're not doing it for sense gratification, we're doing it for Krishna's pleasure. We're doing everything. We're cooking for Krishna's pleasure, we're eating for Krishna's pleasure, we're dressing for Krishna. We dress beautifully. We come to the temple, we dress pleasantly, we dress attractively for Krishna. Not that we want all the Matajis to look at me or we want all the men to look at me, but we dress like this so that Krishna will look at me. When I get nicely dressed and put nice tilak on, Krishna will be happy to see me. Because I'm so attractive, Krishna will be happy to see me here. And I do that for him. And I do that for myself. So that's something that's really important. When the kirtan is for Krishna, then it becomes kirtan. When it's not for Krishna, it becomes music. It just becomes a musical performance. But we're not musicians, we're not performers. And we're not orators, we're not great speakers like this, but we do our kirtan for glorification of Krishna, that's what it means. And that's how we have to fix our consciousness before kirtan, that this is an arpanam, this is my offering to God. I'm doing this kirtan to please Krishna. I'm doing this kirtan to bring people to Krishna's lotus feet. That's why we're doing it. And not for ourselves. And as soon as we think we're doing it for ourselves, or as soon as we forget who we're doing it for, then it becomes sense gratification.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, we have a line in Brahma Samhita which says that Krishna removes the karma from the devotees. And then, so my question is, can only Krishna remove the karma, or is it possible through process of atonement that don't have bhakti in them?
It's karmani nidhati, kintu cha bhakti bhajam. Only Krishna can do that. Only bhakti can do that. Only by engaging in pure devotional service can we become free from karmas. No process of tapasya, no charity, no amount of charity, no amount of austerity, no amount of erudition, no amount of scholarship can free us from our karmas. But Krishna can, and Krishna's devotees. I mean, we get that Krishna's intervention comes through his devotees. So the spiritual masters, the initiating spiritual masters, the instructing spiritual masters, the scriptures, the holy name of the Lord is how we become freed. Not only Krishna can do that. And Krishna and his devotees.
Then what about the process of atonement that is mentioned, that you were mentioning? And even mentioned in the 6th canto that...
The process of atonement is for karmakanda. The process of atonement is to nullify a bad reaction that we might get because we made some mistake. But in pure devotional service, that can't purify us of the desire or the propensity proclivity to do something. I can't remove that. The only way to remove that or to nullify that is to burn it, to destroy it through bhakti. Otherwise, any kind of countermeasures that we try to engage in can't be fully effective. Of course, there can be some effect. We can get some piety. We can develop a better position, perhaps in our next life, but it won't be free from material contamination.
Yeah.
Yes. I got a question. Like you said that all the people in the Panchatattva have bhava, but Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, like in one story, he got fear that the Lord is not there, and he got fear that the Yavanas were ruling the kingdom. So how does that represent bhava?
Bhava? I didn't actually mention bhava, I meant bhakti, but they do have bhav. All of them have bhav, a lot of bhava for Krishna. And Srivas Thakur's special personality, his incarnation of Narada Muni, and he's an eternal servant of the Lord. He comes whenever Krishna performs a lila or an incarnation, he will appear and perform different types of services for Krishna. And in this lila, he performs a very wonderful service as a householder, where Lord Chaitanya started the Sankirtan movement in his house, did all-night kirtan, stayed up all night doing kirtan in his house. And it said that he didn't have any concern for making money or anything like that. He just did bhakti, and somehow or other Krishna supplied everything he needed. So if he had fear, and he did have at one stage, he was worshipping Nrsingadev for protection because the Yavanas were coming to interfere with their kirtan, coming to interfere with their bhakti. But Lord Chaitanya, you can say, arranged this whole pastime so that Lord Chaitanya could display his godhood to him and show him a special form. Lord Chaitanya came to him and showed him a special form that he revealed to him that he was actually the same person that he's worshipping as Nrsingadev. The original Nrsingadev was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a special six-armed form, Shadabhuj form. Yes? Mike? Thank you.
Karma Kanda section, it says, if you do any karma and then you do certain other karmas to nullify that, as you mentioned. And in some other lectures, Prabhupada also mentioned karma cannot be nullified, doesn't matter what it is. So which statement is true? So every action has its own role, good or bad, whatever karma you've done, it has actions and reactions. So which one is true? Or both statements are true? Sorry, am I able to put my question? So Karma Kanda section says that if you do this, you can get nullified from that reactions or get rid of that karma. And in other scriptures somewhere, also Prabhupada also mentioned in his quotes, like any action, any karma, whatever you do, you cannot nullify it. It has its own effects. So is the both statements true or?
Okay. The point of Karma Kanda and the point of Prayaschitta is that it brings you back to the same place where you were. So it doesn't nullify, it just brings you back. It just kind of reset. It's a reset. So you just get back to the same position where you were, and you might be doing more pious activities and you might be progressing, but it doesn't mean that you're becoming, you can't become free from, because good karma is also material. It's also binding in the material world to have this good karma, like to be influenced by the mode of goodness. Goodness is a platform for knowledge, and knowledge is to take us to the spirit, to Krishna, to the spiritual understanding. So it's only a prayaschitta can only put us on that platform in goodness, but not to pure goodness, to a state of pure goodness, or to reconnect with our original Krishna consciousness, our constitutional position. That requires bhakti to destroy the seed of desire in the heart, because prayaschitta doesn't work with the desire, it doesn't remove the desire or the propensity to engage in activity. In fact, it perpetuates it, because we become more conditioned by goodness. That's why it's called conditioned by the mode of material nature. So we become more and more conditioned in that situation, in goodness. But the goal of the bhakti yogi is to transcend that and to go to a spiritual platform. And this prayaschitta can't take us there. That's the whole introduction to Nectar Devotion, Nectar Instruction, Prabhupada's discussion in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, particularly helps us to understand that. Really analyzes that in detail and describes the supremacy of bhakti. That's why bhakti is superior to all other processes of karma, yoga and jnana, is because it nullifies that.
Thank you, Guru.
Okay. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Yeah, sure.